Welcome to ePathshala. The module which we are going to discuss is module number 4 of paper on Indian political thought. Dear friends, myself Dr. Vandana Arora. I am Associate Professor with Department of Laws, Punjab University, and today we are going to discuss the module which contains the political thought in Dharma Shastra with special reference to Manu Smriti. Now Manu Smriti, the Indian political thought is the work of the great minds, and one of them is the Manu. Now, the Manu Smriti, as laid down by the Manu, is a work of a storehouse of information on the political, social, and economy of that time. He is the one who has laid emphasis on all the functions which has to be performed. Manu Smriti is to be taken into consideration as it is an authoritative work on the Hindu law. He has also laid down and emphasized and laid down the first code of civil and the criminal law. With this, we are going to start and discuss the Manu Smriti as laid down in Dharma Shastra in detail. Now, the objective of the study is to study and analyze the political thought in Dharma Shastra with special reference to Manu Smriti. Dharma Shastra occupy the center importance in Hindu political thought, especially about the regulation of life in entire affair, be it political, economic, domestic, religious, legal or cultural. Dharma Shastra refer to a science of dharma and are series of texts which teach the eternal immutable dharma found in Vedas. The Dharma Shastra expanded and remodeled in Vedas from Dharma Shastra. The most succinct statement on dharma are found in Dharma Shastra and Dharma Shastra, which can be divided into three categories. First is rule for good conduct. Second is rules for legal procedure, and third is rules for penance. The Dharma Shastra prescribe rules for all society so that each person might live according to dharma. These texts are attributed to the ancient rishi or sages. Manu was the most important of these and is the most famous, and his Manava Dharma Shastra is the most famous of all the texts. It is also called Manu Smriti. It is in the form of dharma revealed by the Brahma to Manu, the first man, and passed on through Bhrigu, one of the great sages. The divine origin is claimed for all Dharma Shastras to facilitate their general acceptance. Manu Smriti is one of the 18 Dharma Shastras which constitute a part of Smriti literature. It is one of the oldest texts and is believed to have been written at the time when Brahma traditions was under serious threat from non-Vedic movement. Although this work has been criticized by the British scholars, socio-religious reformists and feminists, Manu work takes the foremost place because this work is based on Vedas. Manu, the ancient Indian thinker, had given us a rich political and administrative ideas and policies. Manu Smriti holds a position of preeminence in Hindu literature. It is oldest and well-known Smriti. Manu Smriti or Manav Dharma Shastra is a work of encyclopedic scope. Manu was one of the most original thinker of ancient Indian thought. Most of the commentaries on ancient Indian political thoughts are the view that Manu belongs to 4th century BC. Manu Smriti is the storehouse of information on social, judicial and political life of that period. It contains the social obligation and the duties of various castes of individuals in different stages of life. The Manu Smriti is one of the most authoritative work on Hindu law and presents a normal form of Hindu society and civilization. So, it is the Manu who gave the stamp of sanctity and permanence to the socio-political institutions of the land and provide the first code of civil and criminal law. Manu Smriti, translated Law of Manu or Institution of Manu, is the most important and authoritative Hindu law book, which served as a foundational work on Hindu law and jurisprudence in ancient Indian society. Until the modern times, it was a standard reference for both the rulers who patronized Vedic faith and people who practiced it. Manu in Hindu tradition is considered to be the first of the Brahman's son and progenitor of human race. Therefore, it is difficult to determine the age of Manu Smriti. The law of Manu might have been known to the Vedic period for a long time before they are codified into a present form, sometimes during the post-Vedic period. Manusmriti projects an ideal society, an ideal human conduct as a basis to establish an orderly society and divine-centered life. To promote those ideals and enforcing divine will, it presupposes numerous laws to minutely govern human life and conduct as applicable to each individual according to her or his social class, duties, and responsibilities. Their purpose is to inculcate discipline, provide a basis for the rulers to enforce lawful conduct, and ensure the orderly progression of the world through righteous conduct and observation of obligatory duties by the individuals who have chosen for themselves the life of householder or that of renunciant. The power to enforce the law is carefully distributed among the rulers and guardians of the society who assist him in decision making. Manusmriti recognizes the corrupting and deluding influence of power over the mind and cautions the king to exercise their judgment with great care in order to avoid sinful karma and harmful influence consequences for themselves and the world. The laws that were proposed by Manu to govern human conduct and society reflect the condition, needs, and value of the time in which they were formulated. Most of them do not fit into the present-day value system. They acknowledge the prevailing social and gender inequalities as a natural condition of human existence and propose law to govern the behavior of individual without providing scope for any changes that time may bring in conditions of the society or lives of the people. Hence, today we may find many laws of Manu archaic, outdated, and even primitive. Then comes the genesis of the law of Manu. It is believed that Manu, the ancient teacher of sacred rites and law, is the author of Manav Dharma Shastra. The initial category of work narrated how 10 great sages appealed to the Manu to pronounce the sacred laws to them, and how Manu fulfilled their wish by asking the learned sage Bhrigu, who had been carefully taught the metrical tenets of sacred law, to deliver his teaching. However, equally popular is the belief that Manu has learned the law from Lord Brahma, the creator, and so the authorship is said to be divine. Content of the Manusmriti and structure of Manusmriti is concerned so far as this is concerned. The first chapter deals with the creation of the word by deities, the divine origin of the book itself, and the objective of studying it. Chapter 2 to 6 recounts the proper conduct of the members of the upper caste, their initiation into a Brahmin religion by sacred threat or sin-removing ceremony, the period of disciplined studentship devoted to the study of Vedas under the Brahmin teachers, the chief duties of the householder, the choice of wife, marriage, protection of sacred hearth fire, hospitality, sacrifice to the gods, feast to his departed relative, along with the numerous restrictions, and finally the duties of old age as well. The 7th chapter talks about manifold duties and responsibility of the king. The 8th chapter deals with modus operandi in the civil and the criminal proceedings and of the proper punishment to be meted out to the different castes. The 9th and the 10th chapter relates to the custom and laws regarding inheritance and property, divorce, and the law occupation for each caste. Chapter 11 expresses the various kinds of penance for the misdeeds, and the final chapter expounds the doctrine of karma, rebirth, and salvation. There are two commentaries. When we come to the commentaries on Manu, there are two commentaries. Though we know we are talk of numerous commentaries written by Manusmriti, two of the major commentaries are Brahmacharya and Medharithi. Then regarding the creation and the origin of sacred law by the Manu, how Manu has commented on that. The Manusmriti begin with the concept of Nirgun Brahma, the unmanifest supreme cosmic reality, to be experienced with the aid of practice in breath regulations, that is pranayama, the prayer, that is jap, and meditation on the fundamental syllabi Om. The cosmos came into existence when the god awake from the primeval sleep. Nirgun Brahman became manifest in the endless cosmic cycles. The rest of it remains unmanifest. According to Manu, Karam Yoga is the most important yoga as it includes both Pravritti, that is the regulation of the desire, and Nivritti, that is total eradication of the desire. Then the Manu has also talked of 10 characteristics of Dharma, that is patience, forgiveness, restraint, not to steal, cleanliness, keep in mortify, wisdom, knowledge, truth, and do not be angry. 5 basic rules of Dharma, Vedas, Smriti. The Veda Smriti, the good conduct and self-complacency of one's own conscience. These 4 are the positive proof of virtue, not to indulge in violence against others. Truthfulness, not to acquire illegitimate wealth by the methods such as theft, robbery, cheating, bribery, making undue profits in trade or business, exploiting the needs of others, unreasonable professional charges, commercialization of service-oriented professions such as lawyers, doctors, and teachers by resorting to the professional exploitation. Cleanliness in thoughts, words, and deed. Control of senses. Conflict between a good and evil is a fact of nature, and good implies participation in the cosmic process in our effort to move beyond. Doctrine of repayment of debt to the gods, teachers, parents, and society at large. To pay back this debt is a human endeavor. The first stage is this endeavor is to serve one's immediate superior, that is one's master and one's mother and father. Then comes the nature and purpose. The Manusmriti is written with a focus on should of the dharma rather than actuality of everyday practice in India at the time. Still, it is practicable, applicable. Application should not be underestimated. Through the intermediate forces such as instructions of scholars, the teaching indeed have indirect effect on major segment of Indian population. It is also invaluable point of common reference in scholarly debates. It seems like that the book was written in a manner which was very mindful of dangers facing the Brahman community during the time of much change and social upheaval. A renewed alliance between the Brahman and the Kshatriya community is clearly a goal reflected in the introduction of Vyanavar Prasad. Manu has also commented on the Varna system. Manusmriti starts with certain views of man-cosmic relationship. It gave a profound account of creation of work as well as details of ordinary daily life. He suggested the classification of society into 4 varnas, that is Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras in order of their superiority. Brahmans were said to be originated from the head of the creator, Brahma, and hence occupies the highest place and is conceived as incarnation of law. Because of this purity or origin, he deserves to be everything in the world, be it learning, agriculture. Manu said, whatever exists in the world was the occupation of Brahmin. Learning was their predominant occupation. Manu allows him to take agriculture as well. According to Manu, second in hierarchy were the Kshatriyas. They originated from the arms of Brahmas, are put into the category of warrior. Their duty is to protect the society. Manu was in favor of cordial relations between the 2 upper varnas for the sake of welfare of the world. Vaishyas, originated from the thighs of Brahmans, were to be included in trade and business. Whereas Shudras, originated from the feet of the Brahma, had to confine to an occupation of serving the first 3 varnas, barred from all sacred learnings and were held in low profile by Manu. Manu insisted all the 4 varnas need to confine themselves to work meant for them lest the word should be thrown into confusion. The social organization was Chaturvarna theory, which was supposed to be manifested for the harmonious function of the society. According to Manu, therefore, Varna system was not optional, but an integral part of socio-political setup, and the same should be firmly enforced. Thus, Manusmriti acknowledges and justifies the caste system as the basic order of the and regularity of the society. It clearly recognizes 4 classes of people and their respective role in preservation of dharma. Then, regarding the origin of the state, according to Manu, before origin of organized state, people lived in the state of nature. There was no legal rules or regulations to govern their conduct. Hence, it was the state of confusion and anarchy. This was considered to be the darkest period in Indian history. In such a situation, people approached Brahma, the creator, to relieve them of the tortuous life. Thus, creator gave the king to maintain law and order and punish the wicked. Thus, according to Manu, the state as an institution was not evolved gradually, but was a sudden creation. Then Manu goes on to state that apart from divine origin of the state, need for the state was not out of economic needs of the man, but out of the basic nature of evil intention and uncontrollable nature of mankind. Manu has also commented upon the kingship. He says he propagated divine origin of the kingship. According to him, it was the God who created an entity called king to save the people of the region. It is this position held by the king that made people express their obedience to him. Though king appeared to be human form, yet he possesses the qualities of God. Again, he said the king possessed qualities and power of 8 guardians of the earth: Indra, Vayu, Yam, Ravi, Agni, Chandra. Thus, the king was a divine creation to promote and social harmony and peace and welfare. Manu has laid down the duties and the functions of the king. Good kingdom is the one in which saintly people live, reside. People are healthy and fruits and vegetables are grown in plenty. People are polite and fearless, and there are good crops and easy commerce. The main duty of the king is to protect good people and punish bad ones. There is no place for offenders like smugglers, profiteers, and black marketers. The whole idea again is an emphasis that community cannot be divorced from cosmic relationship. Again, supreme duty of the king is to protect the weak, especially orphans, widows, and the old. The 5 functions, as emphasized by the Manu in his Manusmriti, are Dandaniti, taxation, justice and judicial system, interstate relationship, morality, and religion. One of the most important functions of the king, according to Manu, was the chastisement. The king, he was expected to protect his subject and in return receive food grains, some amount of merchandise, and pretty girls in marriage. He has to regulate the social lives of the subject, protect them from aggression, and promote safety. He must also maintain law and order, keep the kingdom free from robbers, accord protection to the private property, bestow favors on deserving people, control the price of commodity, prevent food adulteration, control weights and measure. The following is the brief explanation of some of the other functions. That is Dandaniti. Hindu polity laid considerable emphasis on Dandaniti. Danda means punishment and Niti means law. So Dandaniti refers to the law that are followed to punish the person from the crime committed by him or her, and also in a proper administration of state affairs. According to Manu, human nature is evil and corrupt, and he is believed that Dand alone would bring about a discipline. Manu, however, stated that Dand must be used sparingly and in fact to be avoided as far as possible. Even though Manusmriti has 12 chapters, it could be divided into 4, that is Akar, Prashchit, Vyavhar, and Rajdharma, depending on the variety of the topic. Then he has also talked about taxation. Manu also talked about the state finance. According to Manu, the system of taxation should be such as to enhance nation's wealth. He also empowered the king the right to collect taxes for providing protection to the people. Thus, taxation was linked to a wage theory. He also mentioned it very clearly that the tax must be collected from both land as well as cattle. He, however, has fixed the percentage of tax on the land and the cattle as not less than 25% and 20% respectively. Manu, however, advised the king that taxes should be levied keeping in view the capacity of the subject and their occupation. According to him, the king is entitled to 1/50th of the gold, 1/6th of the crop, and 1/12th of the commerce. He also stated that if the subjects are overburdened with tax payment, it would lead to a great amount of frustration and discontentment among them and would eventually result in nation calamity. Manu has also advised the king that entire amount collected through taxes must be used for the welfare activities like helping in agriculture, promoting trade and industry. Then Manu has also talked about the justice and the judicial system. Manu, in fact, was the earliest of the ancient political thought thinkers of India to emphasize upon the need for the fair justice and proper judicial administration. He claimed that king cannot rule without justice. He believed that good ruler would always ensure quick and cheap justice to the needy and those who deserve it. Manu's idea of social organizations are aimed to establish order and justice. Justice being very significant had to be performed by judges who are appointed on the basis of their character and experience, and the decision should be based on equity as well as taking into account diverse custom and social practices prevalent in India. Manu was of the opinion that king must pay more attention to the entire judicial system. Manu, however, did not support equal treatment of all the castes in the society and in fact greatly favored Brahmanas. He also linked justice to dharma and that justice must be provided based on righteousness. He emphasized on reformatory theory in punishment rather than retaliatory. He expects the king to be well versed in Dharma Shastra and other literature for the proper pronouncement of justice as per the well established custom and practices. Then he has also talked about the jury system. It was found that jury system existed in Manu's period and Manu recommended the king to give the power of judicial administration to Brahmins in his absence. It was also surprising to note that the juries in the court of Brahman judges were also Brahmins. Manu has described such where 3 Brahmins versed in Vedas and the learned judge appointed by the king as a court of the 4th phased Brahmins. The jury system as it now prevails in European countries was somewhat different from what prevailed in ancient India. The 3 or the 5 members of the judicial assembly acted as juror as well as the judges, but the final decision rested on the Chief Justice. The Chief Justice decided cases with the assistance of learned Brahmins and in accordance with law. The Adhyaksh decided the cases with the assistance of 3 members of the Judicial Assembly. The Chief Justice and the Pune judges were chosen in view of their eminent character and deep learning. They were, as a rule, Brahmins, but sometimes few of them were selected from other castes as well. Manu had provided a qualification of judges who could be a judicial administrator. The one who was truthful, acted after due consideration, wise, and knew the respective value of virtues, pleasure, and wealth could be a judicial administrator. A king who properly inflicted punishment prospered with respect to those 3 means of happiness. But if he was cunning, partial, deceitful, he was to be destroyed, even through the unjust punishment which he inflicted. Manu felt that the judicial administration should not rest in the hand of a feeble-minded king. Next in importance to the king's court was a principal court held in the important centre and in the larger town forming the headquarters. Then he has also talked about interstate relations. He says another important and significant issue discussed by Manu was the problem of interstate relations, which were largely based on political expediency and established righteousness. Manu was in the favour of war under 2 conditions only: when there is a threat to one's kingdom and secondly to the expansion of territory. The king, according to Manu, was like a weeder who removes weeds and protect the plants. So the primary duty of the king is to protect the kingdom and the people therein and to destroy the enemy. For this purpose, Manu suggested certain techniques which he called Chatropaya. They are conciliation, dissension, bribery and force to tackle the opponents. Manu was in the favour of first and the last technique. He further stated that force should be the last resort. Then Manu on morality and religion. The ancient Indian political thought gave great credence to the religious basis of the human existence and acceptance of traditional morality. Manu rejected cruelty and deceit. He emphasized on the rule of law and code of conduct to the Kshatriyas. Manu, however, permitted a departure for such code of conduct in the interest of king. Then he has also talked about organization of the states in villages, districts and provinces. The larger unit, he says, must deal with the problems only when the smaller unit fails to solve it. And that's the Manu's dictum of decentralization, that the larger and the more diverse country cannot be governed except by organizing it into a smaller unit. Finally, the Manu is regarded as a father of Indian polity because of the following reasons. Manu was profoundly influenced by Hindu tradition and philosophy in the writing of Manusmriti. He presented in his Smriti a picture of socio-economic, cultural and religious environment prevailing in the ancient time. He focused on the institution of kingship. Based on the Hindu religion tradition, he presented a rigid social framework of Chaturvarna system consisting of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vyasya and Shudra. This hierarchy of social caste and their relations formed the integral theme of his political philosophy. Manu exhibited a deep concern for the protection of ethical autonomy of the society. Manu had not attempted the political phenomena as a distinct identity, but had discussed it in the context of wider social purposes connected with the religion and morality. Manu has not presented a theory of state, but provided an account of government and its function. Manu laid stress on the division of power and discrimination of function. Manu Smriti deals with judicial administration, the evidence, the procedure of the court, different types of court. So after going through the modules in detail, one can safely conclude that Manu was one of the most important figures of his ancient times. Now the Manu has laid down in his Manu Smriti a detail about the existence of the social class and what importance should be given to them. Manu Smriti is the authoritative work on Hindu law, and he has also laid down a civil and the criminal code for that. Manu of his time, after Manu, the Dharma Shastra has also been laid down by Narada, by Brahaspati, by Vishnu, but they are all considered to be only a legal textbook rather than the Manu. Manu's work is considered to be the most auspicious and can be relied even on today's work. With this I would like to conclude my lecture, and if you want to learn more, again you can rely on various textbooks and the reference books which are available on the topic, like we have V.R. Mehta's book, B.N. Ray's book on Indian political thought, and you can also rely on UPSC Civil Services Main Exam book by Arihant Publication. You can also rely on one book, The Wonder That India Was, as also the Indian Political Culture and History, which is published by Bharatiya Vidya Mandir. Thank you.